Hello and welcome to the channel. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how to cut and sew a simple corset gown that is beginner friendly. So if it's your first time viewing my channel, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button. So let's dive right into today's video. So now I have marked out my basic measurement, which is my shoulder to bust line, under bust and waistline. So I went ahead to add 1 inch to this because we'll be creating like a slight basque at the lower part of the dress. So now I'm going to go ahead to mark my neckline. So for this pattern, I won't be using a turtle neckline. I'm just doing a basic neckline, which is 3 inches by 3 inches, and I'll go ahead to mark that out. So now I'm going to mark my shoulder divided by 2, which is 7 inches, and I'll add ½ inch because I'm attaching sleeve to this dress, come down by 1 inch, and I'll go ahead to connect my neckline. So next, I'm going to go ahead to get my chest line, that is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, so which gives me 7 inches, and I'm going to rule a line across that point, touching to the other end. So now you're going to go ahead to divide your chest line into 2, and I'll go ahead to fold my tape this way, mark the middle. So after marking the middle, I'll place my tape and I'll mark my bust circumference, which is 33 divided by 4. So I'll make a point at that place, and I'll place my French curve touching my bust circumference, the ½ inch we came in, and then the upper part of my shoulder, and I'll go ahead to rule a line with my French curve touching it. So after I'm done doing this is what I have. So I'll go ahead and use my marker to outline it so that it's going to be very visible. So now the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to mark my dart intake, and to do that I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. So I'm also going to mark that at my chest line, at the bust line, at the under bust line, and then I'll go ahead and mark it at my waistline. So after marking it at my waistline, I'll also go ahead to take it down to that 1 inch after my waistline. So after marking that, I'm going to go ahead to rule a line to connect all these dots that I have marked out. So after I'm done connecting it, the next step I'm going to do is to go ahead and divide what I have at the shoulder into 2. Go ahead to connect from my chest line to that upper part. So now I've gone ahead to connect that, and the next thing we are going to do is to go ahead to mark our dart intake at both sides. So for a plus size person, you're going to be marking 1.5 inches on both sides. So after marking that, go ahead and connect all your dart lines. So now I've gone ahead to connect my dart lines. So now I'm going to go ahead to place my French curve, connect from my bust down to my under bust. Go ahead and repeat the same process for the other side. So if you don't have a French curve, just go ahead and use a freehand sketch. So now this is what I have at this point. So I'm going to go ahead to draw out my cup, but before doing that, I'll go up by 1.5 inches. So if you don't want to reveal much cleavage, please go ahead and mark 2 or 2.5 inches. So I'll be taking my dart intake of 1 inch on both sides. So I'll go ahead to connect. Then on this side also, I'll go ahead to connect at that point that I made at the upper part. So now after connecting this, I'll just go ahead to use my marker to outline my pattern so that it's going to be very visible for you to see. So after now, the next step I'm going to take is just to go down by 1 inch from my bust line. So this is where the cup is going to start, from this part. So from there, I'm going to go ahead to take it up. So looking at what we have at the thumbnail, you notice that is a little deep. So I'm just going to connect it back to my armhole, and I'm going to go ahead to outline it and also to make that visible. So go ahead and also mark this out. So now I'm going to go ahead to place my French curve at this part and connect it down to my under bust. Now if you don't have a French curve, please go ahead and use your freehand sketch. So after marking my cup for this part, whatever I have from the armhole to the other side of my body circumference, I'll divide it into two and I'll go ahead to connect it down to my underbust this way. So this is cup A and this is cup B. So now we'll go over to placing the body circumference. So for the bust part, I'm going to place my tape and mark the bust circumference divided by 4. So this dart intake you have on top, which is 2 inches, go ahead and replace it. And I'm going to go ahead to mark my 1.5 inch sewing allowance. So extend your chest line to that point, and what you have on the bust line, make sure is what you have at the chest line. So going down to the underbust, measure your underbust circumference, replace the dart intake and mark the sewing allowance of 1.5 inches. So after you're done doing that, I'll go down to my waist and I'm going to go ahead to mark the waist circumference divided by 4 and go ahead to measure the dart intake and replace it and mark your sewing allowance. So now, if you want to snatch your waist, go ahead to do that. So I'll connect from my waistline down to that point. I have that extra 1 inch I connected, and from that point I will take it down to my waistline, then connect from my underbust to my bust and my underbust to the waistline. So after connecting, I'm just going to go ahead to mark here as the yoke part. This is C1 meaning center one and S1 meaning side one. Now I'm going to go ahead to cut out my pattern. So at this point, if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always supporting my channel. So if you have any question concerning this particular pattern, please leave the comment at the comment section. So after that, we're going to go ahead to move to the back part of this dress. So if you watched the front pattern, we did exactly the same thing. The only difference is that I added a zipper allowance in front. So for the neckline for the back, I use 3 by 2.5 inches. So the neck depth is a bit higher. So now from my zipper allowance, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, which is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches. I'm just going to go ahead and extend it down to my chest line. So I'll go ahead and rule a line at that point. So now the next step I'm going to take is just to go ahead and mark ½ inch at both sides of my pattern, and after that I'll place my tape and mark my shoulder to bust plus 1 inch. So my dart is going to start from that point down to my waistline and from the other side down to my waistline. So note, for the pattern for the back, it stopped at the shoulder to waistline. I didn't add any extra 1 inch at the lower part. Go ahead to mark your bust circumference divided by 4. Mark your sewing allowance, mark your underbust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace it and mark your sewing allowance. At the waistline, mark your waist circumference divided by 4, go ahead and replace the dart intake you took out, mark your sewing allowance. So after you're done doing this, go ahead to connect from the chest line to the bust line to the underbust and down to the waistline. So after you're done connecting, go ahead to use your marker to rule it out so that it's going to be visible. So after I'm done doing this, we are going to go ahead and work on the yoke part of this pattern. So right, to do that, I'm just going to connect from here down to this point and go ahead to draw out this yoke for the back. So if you watch my channel, you're going to be used to this particular pattern for the back. So go ahead and take out 0.25 or 0.3 inches from there so that there won't be gaping at the back of your yoke. So now to get rid of bulginess, I'm going to go ahead and mark ½ inch, extend my chest line. So for the upper part of the yoke, it's not going to extend, it's just going to stop there. So at the back, go ahead to extend that your ½ inch upwards, label at C1 and S1. That is for people that are going to go ahead to cut out their pattern into two. But for mine, I will be merging the dart intake and I'll be cutting the lower part as one piece. So after I'm done cutting, I'm just going to go ahead to blend in my dart this way. I'm going to blend it in as one piece, right? So this is what I have on this part. So after this, I'm just going to go ahead to cut out the upper part of my yoke. Cut out the upper part of your pattern. So also remember to take out that 0.25 or 0.3 that you marked out at the yoke. So I'll go ahead and cut out the rest of the pattern. So after cutting this out, we'll be moving over to the lower part of the pattern, which is the skirt. So now to cut the skirt or the lower part of my dress, to fold your dress is your hip circumference divided by 4 plus your sewing allowance. So after that, I'm just going to rule out this line. So then I'm going to mark my waist circumference divided by 4 and mark my sewing allowance. So after doing that, I'm going to go ahead to place my tape, mark 7 inches from there for my hip point, and I'm going to mark my hip circumference divided by 4, and I'll go ahead and add my sewing allowance, which ends at that point. So now, I forgot to mention the full length of my dress. So now, to get your full length, we stopped on our top, we stopped on our waist, which is shoulder to waist 17 inches. So now the full length of my dress is 56 inches, and I'll go ahead to add extra 2 inches to it for folding or turn up allowance, making it 58 inches. And after that, I'll go ahead and mark out that 56 inches. So after that, I'm going to go ahead to connect from my waistline to my hip point. So after I'm done connecting, the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to find my waist to knee line. So place your tape from your waist and measure what you have to your knee. So my waist to knee point is 20 inches and I'll go up by 2 inches from that 20 inches. So the reason why I'm doing this is to give my skirt a fitted effect, like a pencil mount skirt. So now, for the measurement I'm going to mark on that point, what I'm going to mark is my hip circumference, which is 40 divided by 4, I have 10, plus 1.5 inches, that's 11.5. So that 11.5, I'll be minusing 2 inches from it, making it 9.5 inches. So I'll be marking that 9.5 inches and go ahead to connect from my hip down to that 9.5 inches. So that 9.5 inches is what I'm going to take from the knee down to the full length of the dress, and also down to the sewing or folding allowance. So after that, I'm just going to go ahead to cut out my skirt pattern. So for the back pattern of the skirt, I'm going to go ahead to place the front part on it, and I'm going to add my zipper allowance to it. So after adding my zipper allowance, I'm going to go ahead to cut it out. So after cutting it out, this is the final look of the dress. So if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button and join us in the sewing part of this tutorial.